Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today I'll be demonstrating how to make a moist and tender Chipotle BBQ pork roast, and I'll also show you how to make a smoked Chipotle BBQ pulled pork. Everyone who has tasted this pulled pork recipe really loves it. It's flavorful and the meat is really moist and tender. At the end of the recipe video, I'll also show you how to put this pulled pork to good use to make two different recipes. To make the pulled pork recipe, as well as the two suggested recipes at the end, you will need to first make my Chipotle BBQ dry rub. If you want to make buns or sandwiches, I would suggest that you make the buns and rolls ahead of time as well. Or, on the other hand, if you want to make the tacos, make a batch with either the soft or hard, or a combination of both, of my soft and hard taco shells. The needed recipes will all be provided in the description below, so check that out. The macronutrient ratio for this recipe is 2.5 to 1, with 1.4 grams of total carbs, with 0.4 grams of dietary fiber, resulting in only 1 gram of net carbs per serving. There's very little prep needed for this recipe. As I mentioned before, you have to make the Chipotle BBQ dry rub. So just for a quick review, into a small bowl, add all the spice ingredients and mix thoroughly. After your spice mix is well blended, then divide the dry rub into approximately 2 equal parts. Then add 1 portion of the dry rub into a small mixing bowl, to which you also add water, tomato paste, apple cider vinegar, and your Worcestershire sauce. Stir the mixture well until it's a homogeneous liquid, and then just set it aside for a moment. You'll use it later. Next, I suggest that you pat dry your meat before applying the dry rub, so that your dry rub will adhere better. Now, with your hand, just take some of the spice rub and pat it and rub it into the meat. Also work the rub into the crevices of the meat. Then in your slow cooker, set it to stovetop high and pour in your oil and heat the oil up. When you see that your oil is nice and hot, begin searing the meat by placing your pork shoulder roast skin side down at first. Keep searing until you notice that the skin is nice golden brown and looks a bit crispy. Then rotate the meat and repeat until the entire pork roast has been seared nicely. And don't forget to do both the ends of the pork roast as well. By the way, if your slow cooker does not have a sear setting, you can do the searing portion on the stovetop in a frying pan. And then just put the meat back into the slow cooker and continue. Then take your liquid barbecue mixture that you prepared earlier and pour it over the top of the roast. Then put the lid back on your slow cooker and set the timer for 6 to 8 hours on the low setting. With this 6 to 8 hour setting, you won't have the full pulled pork, but you will have a really wonderful tender pork shoulder roast. This is the first recipe that I was talking about. Sometimes if I get a really large pork roast, like in this occasion, I double duty the roast. I first made my pork roast, took off a few slices for the meal that evening, and then I put the pork roast back into my slow cooker and put the setting of the slow cooker for 3 to 4 more hours on low. Just to sum up, if you're making the pulled pork and not the roast, your total cooking time in the slow cooker should be about 10 to 12 hours. Don't try to rush it and make it too fast because it really won't work that well. If you do, you will end up with a very dry roast and a very stringy pulled pork. So take your time and you will be rewarded with a really great result. This low setting, set to a longer time, is the secret for a perfect pulled pork every time. To know that your pulled pork is done, you can just wedge a fork in and see if your meat frays, or just reach in and pull out the bone. It should come out instantly because the meat should have come off the bone. Then take 2 forks and fray the meat into large chunks. Don't try to fray into too many stringy bits. The meat will dry out too quickly that way. And if you're wondering what you do with the fat underneath it, the best thing to do is I scrape off the fat and then I either grind or cut the skin into very small pieces and add it back to the roast. By using all the parts of the roast, except the bone of course, you will find that the fat will add extra taste that will flavor as well as moisten the meat. After everything is frayed and chopped and you've added everything back into the slow cooker and stir together, it's a good idea to let the meat mixture rest for about 20 to 30 minutes before serving. During this resting time, the meat will absorb all the drippings and the flavors will infuse. And here you are. That's all there is to making this absolutely fabulous smoky chipotle barbecued pulled pork. Now, as I promised, here are 2 suggestions for what you can do with the pulled pork. The first option is to make a pulled pork sandwich. For this, I use my keto bun and roll. I cut the bun in half and open it up, place a couple romaine lettuce leaves on top, and then pile on 1 serving of the pulled pork. I usually serve this with a salad but what we really like to go with the pulled pork sandwiches is a serving of the roasted broccoli and Parmesan with lemon. I think that this broccoli recipe is a particularly good complement to the flavor of the pulled pork. And here's the macronutrient for this meal. The second option for this pulled pork, which also happens to be in one of our favorite ways to serve the pulled pork, is to use either my hard shell or soft shell tacos. And with these, we create a pulled pork taco. What you add to your taco is completely up to you. Here's a suggestion for your consideration of the things we like to add. First, we pile on some avocado slices, and then a layer of the chopped romaine lettuce. Next, I add a serving of the pulled pork and put chopped cilantro on top of the pork. The final thing I do is I garnish this taco with a dollop of high-fat sour cream. And to make this a completely amazing taco, I take a wedge of lime and squeeze the lime so that the lime juice drizzles on top. This taco is really, really good. I can't wait to be done this video so I can tuck in. And here's the macronutrient for this meal. By the way, the leftover pulled pork will keep well for 3 to 4 days in your fridge. Just don't forget to store it in a glass container and cover with cling wrap. Another great thing about this pulled pork is if you have a lot left over, you can freeze it. One last thing, if you don't have a slow cooker, this can all be done in your oven. Just preheat your oven to 380 degrees Fahrenheit or approximately 190 degrees Celsius. Timing will depend on the size of your roast, but as a guide, it will probably take about 5 to 7 hours for the size of the roast that I suggested in my recipe. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you like my recipe, I would really appreciate it if you would tell your friends and family about it, and I hope you'll come back and check out my next video. The link for this recipe, as well as the other recipes I mentioned, will be posted in the description below.